Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottinen from the Flourish.Academy, where our goal is to empower, educate, and elevate you to create a life that you love through the art and business of photography. In this video, we are going to improve the background of this photograph inside of Photoshop. But first, make sure you check out our sponsor, ymcamera.com, for all of your photography needs. In a previous video, we combined two images in order to place both smiling, happy children on the same canvas. We also changed the color of the truck in his hands. If you haven't seen that video, I'm going to recommend that you watch it first. And now we're going to improve the background. Let's begin by pressing Command Option Shift, that's Control Alt Shift, and the letter E on your keyboard in order to merge all of these layers up to one layer. We're going to press M on our keyboard in order to access the marquee tool, and I'm going to click and drag in order to select this area. Next, we'll go to Edit, Content Aware Scale, and we will click and drag to the right in order to extend that backdrop. Pressing Enter or Return on the keyboard will commit that change, and Command or Control D will deselect. Now I know we have some wrinkles and some shadows in the area. We're going to fix that in a moment. But next we want to work on removing Dad's arm. And I want to be a responsible Photoshop user, so I think I'll name some of these layers so I know where I'm at. So for layer 3, I'm just going to name that Right Backdrop. And I'm going to press Command or Control J on my keyboard in order to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to name this one Arm. I like to keep these adjustments separate in case I need to manipulate them. Now, prior to recording this video, I experimented with multiple methods in order to remove his arm. And my guess is you could probably find 100 different ways to do this. It's actually a challenging edit. And I'm just going to show you the way that I found was easiest and most efficient. If you already have a method to tackle this that works for you, that's great. But know this, every image is different, and a method that works on one photo might not work on another. Let's begin by pressing J on the keyboard in order to access the healing tools. Now I noticed that it grabbed the healing brush, and that's not what I want. I want the patch tool. So I'm going to press Shift J until I have the patch tool. Next, I'm going to click and drag around a portion of his arm, but not right next to her. Place my cursor inside of that selection, click and drag to an area of the background that is clean, and let go so that Photoshop can copy, paste, and blend pixels. It does barely an okay job with that, but it gives me a good start. Command or Control D to deselect. Next, I'm going to press S on my keyboard in order to access the clone stamp. Let's zoom in with a Command or Control plus, spacebar in order to reposition. We need to make this brush a little bit smaller. We're going to do so with the left bracket key. In order to use the clone stamp, you need to hold down Alt or Option and click to define a source. The purpose of the clone stamp is simply to copy and paste pixels. So I will periodically resample areas, and I'll just start to brush over this area in order to remove it. It will not be perfect, but the method that I'm going to use next will help us cover that up. So for now, just holding down Alt or Option and clicking and sort of brushing over this area in order to remove most of it will get us where we need to be. Now, as we get closer to the edge of our arm, obviously we need to be a little bit more careful. So let's make this brush smaller, and let's also take a little bit of the feather away. So to make the brush smaller, press your left bracket key. To take away a little bit of the softness of the edge, you would hold down Shift and press your right bracket key. Again, holding down Alt or Option and clicking to define a source, you would start to brush over this area. And I'm not going to worry too much if I actually hit into her arm, because I'm going to show you how I'm going to fix that in a moment. But let's get it as close as possible and do the best job we can, knowing that we can make some adjustments. Press Command or Control minus in order to zoom out on this image. Yes, I recognize how it looks, but let's hold down Alt or Option and click the visibility next to the background and see the before and after. We're headed in a very good direction. There's really just one last thing to do, and that's to eliminate the shadows from the lights on the backdrop. I'm going to do that by adding a new blank layer. You can click the Create New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers palette, but that takes a little bit too much time for me. So I'm going to press Command-Option-Shift. That's Control-Alt-Shift on the PC and the letter N for New Blank Layer. By the way, when you add Alt or Option to that keyboard shortcut, Photoshop does not ask you any questions like to name the layer, for instance. It just gives you a new layer. Press B on the keyboard in order to access the brush tool. I need to make this brush a lot bigger, and I also want to make sure I have the softest edge or biggest feather possible. So I'm going to hold down Shift and hit my left bracket key several times just to make sure that that's the case. Next, I'm going to hold down Alt or Option in order to access the eyedropper tool. You know what? Let's start on the right. It's a little bit easier over here. And I'm just going to click in this area in order to select that color because I know that it's not pure white. Then I'm going to drop the opacity of the brush tool to 30% or less so that I can begin clicking, dragging, brushing over this area at a low opacity in order to build up that change and essentially brush over those areas, and they start to fade away. So if you look at this layer off and then on, you can definitely see that difference. And let's name layer 3 Right Brush and add another new blank layer that we are going to name Left Brush. And again, this is just to keep things nice and neat and separate in case we need to alter them. So now on the left side, hold down Alt or Option in this area, click to select that color, start to brush. Now the reason we have to be more careful, or there's a little bit more difficult on this side, is because there's light fall off. So you'll notice on the left, it's a little bit darker than on the right. So we just have to make sure that we are taking that into account as we brush over this area. So I'm just brushing and being careful not to get too close to her, although my plan is to mask out whatever issues that I create, because oftentimes fixing one area will cause a problem in another. But I'm just clicking and dragging and brushing in order to remove some of those wrinkles and make it look a little bit better. And if I turn the visibility of that layer off and then on, you see it did a pretty good job. I might even go down here in the bottom a little bit, but some of that feather bled over into the baby, and we're just going to use a layer mask in order to get rid of that. So let's add a layer mask by clicking the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers palette. Next, I'm going to press X on my keyboard in order to make sure that I have a black brush for this layer mask. Now, if I start brushing, it's going to start removing it, but at a 22% opacity. I don't want to take it up to 100% because I want this to blend really nicely. So maybe let's try 72 and let's zoom in, Command or Control plus, make this brush a little bit smaller and just start to brush over these areas where that feather bled into her, making sure that it's just on the background. You could also select her and do this maybe a little faster with the selection. I'm not sure. This works pretty quickly for me, so I'm just going to go for it. Zoom back out with a Command or Control minus, spacebar in order to reposition. Let's see what the left brush layer looks like off and then on. Not bad. Same with the right. Let's look at the overall by holding down Alt or Option, clicking the visibility next to the background layer so you can see the before and the after. I think that looks great. A few last minute cleanup items might be looking at the wrinkles near their feet and improving those a little bit. I don't know. It doesn't bother me that much, but if you're a perfectionist, you can go ahead and do that. Now, at this point, what you could do is use this image maybe for an Easter card by placing a graphic design on the right with their names, something of that nature. You could also crop this down and use it to upload to your lab in order to place it inside of a card template. There are a lot of different things you could do. I think that this looks great. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video.